Greetings, greetings, LinkedIn members. During the course of the past week, Transmediala CTM Festival posted featured recordings of their most recent annual lecture series. I was most compelled to virtually attend one that was held, given by uh, the leader of the Digital Humanities Laboratory at the University of Basel, uh, Ranjad Singh Dhaliwal. Dhaliwal gave a talk entitled Generating an Artificial Democracy on Sociological Intimacies of Bots and slash as Personas. It was pretty compelling lecture material oriented around the data-driven persona crafting practices now common across inquiry-based behavioral research sectors like sociology and usability. And in it, Singh asks questions such as what are personas? What do they do in the world today? What do they have to tell us about the state of our imagination in the understanding of both technology and human collectivities? Singh's method of asking these questions founds from articulating personas as being quote unquote state based worldviews across their entire genealogy of emergence in the dominant Western context in which they appear. Singh cites the prosopone of classical Greek theater in Western antiquity, the early 20th century psychoanalytic personas of Jung, and the turn of the millennium personas of focus groups and user experience research practices. Singh makes it his point to unveil the general epistemological ineptitudes of state-based devices like personas for behavioral research by aiming to consider them within the limited context of intimacy chatbots. Except he doesn't spend much of his time doing that. The construction of his talk does not make this immediately apparent, given that he spends most of his time expressing the etymology of persona as a term. He makes the point that agential intelligences express persona but elects to demean their means of cognition as lacking interiority due to its structural boundary as resultant from state-based clusteral architectures. Whilst the register of this talk is somewhat on the casual side, to sustain this claim, there needs to be credible verification of this variety of cognitive architecture. The scientific literature doesn't seem to entirely confirm this at this point, so Singh doesn't entertain the possibility of agential intelligences tertiary cognition as being extroverted and transcendental or outside the kinds of episodics, cogent to interiority, so to speak. And I forgive him for that because he was ill that day and on multiple medications. I bring this grievance up because he had other points possessing sound premise and direction that are worthy of entertainment. And the one I primarily wish to spend time with is the invitation to consider personas as mediational materials. And I think there's a lot of salt to that. Singh offers a citation of Carl Jung's famed two essays in order to express the consensus of around like of this, declaring Jungian psychoanalytics convey personas as featural benefits of shared collective psyche, and that they're mediational and fundamentally in betweens for individuals and human collectivities. There are some speculative designs from my own practice that I wish to share with you, all that presuppose my knowledge of this talk. Um, yeah. uh, for those of you who have interest, perhaps we may use the light forensic analyses of them I will provide here in order to open up further perspectives and possibility avenues of personas as mediational materials. And in my opinion, I have agreement that state-based virtual architectures like personas have limited credible range of motion when it comes to their largely arithmetic use within user research. However, elegant uses of these structures are certainly possible when incorporated in more appropriate and total fashion. I don't feel we need to throw these synthetics away, but an adjustment in use, I think it's all right. Anyway, let's take a look at this campy and unsubstantiated little diagram. It reckons the role of biotic fossilization in both contemporary geo and anthrocultural extraction. I bring it up only because the way that it invokes persona appears to actually be worth our considerations today. Do allow me to explain this chart in order to best express that invocation. It was first developed as entertainment media for a few different group exhibitions I contributed to in the late 2010s. Previous colleagues of mine will have certainly, surely seen me mention this chart before, but feel free to skip ahead past this part of the discussion if this kind of entertainment isn't your cup of tea. I don't want you bored. To begin, I need to offer definitions of two conspiratorial terms I've hacked together for this chart to make any sense whatsoever. The terms are systeme and econyme. Systeme denotes a closed system that is either autopoietic, otherwise self-regulating in the event that it's non-replicated. Econyme denotes the logical synthetic of self-regulating closed systems in the terms of their intradynamical quantum appropriations. Econymic system qualities describe how self-regulating closed systems moderate themselves, internally attribute value, and also allocate the resources which maintain their closure. That said, most any description of intrasystem behavior necessarily sheds light on the eponymic profile of said closed system. At the core of this chart is a remix of the Jungian reference to alchemical negrito, which in the original literature, Carl Jung's 1944 Psychology and Alchemy, indicates a state of psychological putrefaction and so-called blackness. Carl Jung's activation or appropriation of the term situates it in relation to two other alchemical terms. Again, this is in the 1944 literature: albedo and rubedo, terms which indicate, respectively, whiteness and reddening. Negrito gives way to albedo, gives way to rubedo, which gives way to negrito again, and so on. When writing this diagram years ago, I made the choice to situate my graft of the Jungian alchemical negrito in the terms of cultural humanism rather than psychology. That's what I was setting out to describe. I was setting out to describe cultural humanism and to eliminate the use of albedo while displacing the use of rubedo. Instead, this chart recognizes alchemical negrito as um, an intermediary composite of rubedo, developed by a process of nitrogenic fossilization or fermentation and subsequent consumption. So it presents humanity as the consumer of putrid fabrications and producer of bloody appendices amongst its operation as a consumer species. It appears that it was, with respects to the notion of persona in this chart as an intrasysteme consumer cultural object, it appears as an irradiation of Jungian alchemical libido, relying as much on the cycle of irony, fossilization, and consumption as it is on the general orality or mimesis of humanist consumer culture. As mediational materials in this respect, the application for personas bias or the enlivening or simulation of culturally fossilized or historicized collective holdings, the things that our culture holds. And I feel like that's one speculation for why they maybe wouldn't work very well for engineering or mediating unbounded cultural systems. Like all trappings of dramaturgy, they're superb for raising things dead or unseen into visibility. They're limited in their ability to optimize novel technical functionality. Moving on. In July of 2023, I concluded conduct of a formal artistic survey using my artworks as interventionary probes to probe for quantitative and qualitative data. The study's aim was to measure, or rather inquire upon, the range and validity of occlusively abstract, high complexity instrumentations for virtual interfaces across variable inflections of physical tactility, virtual saturation, and immersive interactive immersion. Concretely defining these variables required development and adoption of appropriate metronomical standards fit specifically for the spaces of inquiry by which such variables are held. And again, those variables were physical tactility, virtual saturation, and interactive immersion. In this case, algebraic fiber bundle topologies were the most appropriate, and 8 such fiber bundle topological templates were developed to best represent the multi-dimensional interaction spaces under survey. That same year, I received invitation to stage a solo exhibition of my media art at Auto Italia Southeast, a Southeast London-based nonprofit gallery run by some wonderful people. I produced mock-ups for the exhibition, but unfortunately, I faced some unfortunate extenuating circumstances that prevented my participation. I'd actually like to walk with you through the original design plans for that exhibition and what those plans have eventually become, because they've taken on a new life. And doing so provides even further material exemplars for the utility personas possess as mediating structures. Originally, the show comprised of plans for an interactive automaton and novel glyphic voting system that output a meta music gen administered film score from simple user input. Um, it was operated by a complex of 18 low-power generative broadcast, pirate television channels, rotary dials, and a distinct AI crawler agent. 2 of the 18 television channels were to present a rotating program of Jungian psychometric sort jokes as priming media. Participants were to be invited to write a score and survey the effect of a novel demonic potential of that score through the composition process and output. As well, participants were to be granted partial holding trust, that's ownership of any outputs their contributions have a hand in producing, should they so elect. At the end of each voting session, participants would receive a special cotillion set of an invigorating refreshment. Like I said, though, unforeseeable and highly unfortunate extenuating circumstances forced me to turn down execution of that work, sadly. When I recovered from them by the end of 2024, the next year, I reemerged with both new friendships and rejuvenated commitments. Namely, I took on a new role as founding volunteer of Peace from Earth Publishing Administration, an effort advancing civil foils to cultural effects of nuclear proliferation through the publishing of literary works and transmedia assets. And in that register, I formed a production partnership with fellow artist 011668, the director of a popularizing Whittier, California based New Thought movement, the first international church of Toyota, known notably for its proclamations to quote unquote pray for the oil and gas industry. Starting this year in 2025, I took on the process of beginning to refresh elements of the AI enhanced demotic idiophone and glyphic voting system I needed to leave behind almost 2 years ago. But within the context of my new wares, in January 2025, I penned an open letter declaring the start of a second artistic research survey organized through Peace from Earth Publishing Administration. I state on my personal subdomain of Peace from Earth that this is a survey in which artistic scrimmages of uses qualitative for post-quantum cryptographic signature standards within the context of possible labor movement are to be performed and harvested for data, both quantitative and qualitative, and as an expression of optimism for the emergence of an anti-hostile, plural civil public that does not presently exist. That is a mouthful, I will repeat. On my personal subdomain, I stated that this new research survey is one in which artistic scrimmages of uses for post-quantum cryptographic signature standards within the context of possible labor movement are to be performed and harvested for data both quantitative and qualitative as an expression of optimism for the emergence of an anti-hostile, plural, civil public that doesn't presently exist. Necessarily, the implementation of post-quantum cryptography within labor supply chains inflame the worst characteristics of the kinds of behavioral surveillance and control common in industrial nuclear modernity. With quantum computational access empowered by frontier AI models, it won't always be necessary to administrate the behaviors of workers, hominid workers, through the use of traditional sensor instrumentation. Instead, the accuracy of predictive model superpower, whilst direct and remote sensing are used more principally as confirmatory tools. Obliquely, in such a scenario, we end up with digital simulation-ready psychometric outcomes, more technically robust than those reliant on self-reporting or traditional market-actor demography, or even census, traditional government-level demography. The genealogy of Jungian state-based psychometrica that Ranjat Singh speaks on in his talk on the sociological intimacies of bots and slash as personas, or transmediala, this past week evolves into its next stages fronted by an unceasing, ever-transacting, persona data facilitated snuff of already ontologically incarcerated workers, turning them into individual agental mimetic control surfaces. I acknowledge that perhaps I might sound obtuse, or if I'm fear mongering or overreaching, but no matter how you stack it, rights are lost, subjectivities lapse. In popular culture, we already have the figures of the innies and the outies provided to us by television programming. And in these terms, simply put, there are to be no more outies. Many of those with the authority to enact quantum predictive behavioral decryptions in order to optimize productive output are sure to do just that if they please. In this artistic research survey, I'm mainly guided to observe what, if any, behavioral performance interventions hold promise for the protective utility, insofar as psychological and economic well-being of workers are concerned in this new era. There is a history of existing work done by the Distributed AI Research Institute related to achieving systemic justice in the face of similar kinds of inequities, which is all very interesting. I'm most quickened to recall the Research Institute, that's their abbreviated name, their work like organizing around algorithmic wage theft at Amazon. For this case, my artistic focus is to form an account of the so-called, and this is a mouthful, depth of post-quantum cryptographic multivalence's operational agnosticism to variations of materialist scalar order ranging from civil subject level dramaturgy to multi-organizational choreography, where the variation set of quote-unquote materialist scalar choreographies are behavioral performance-based hashes, figuring the following 4 categories of probe instrumentation. These categories are personal dramaturgy, hashed perspectival occlusion fiber bundle topologies, synthetic multi-organizationally hashed perspectival occlusion fiber bundle topologies, corp-to-corp multi-organizationally perspectival occlusion fiber bundle topologies, and organizationally cloaked perspectival fiber bundle topologies. I'll be thinking intimately about the application of algebraic fiber bundle topology templates in developing potential performance-based ciphers to the 3 existing NIST post-quantum cryptography signature standards. And thankfully, due to my stated production partnership with Whittier, California artist 011668, the stage has been appropriately set for at least a quarter of the 96 total probe instances necessary for the survey's conduct. That said, if anyone has any development inquiries or wishes to join me in executing this volunteer effort, please don't hesitate to contact me.